Her earbuds died.
Oh dear. Okay. So
Now I can hear.
I'm saying greetings to the online community, to the live stream recording, and welcome to our reading tonight. We are reading Psalm 77. It's 21 verses, and we're going to follow along. We have two people who've joined us on Zoom, and maybe we'll have others that will catch up as we move along the trail. Barbara was just getting ready. Oh, hold on a second. I have to change the view for myself. How are you, Colette?
I am, hey, I'm on time.
Yes, I know.
Hello. Good to see you.
Good. I know sometimes what you have to go through to get here on time, so I appreciate that. All right, so Barbara's just ready to read. So why don't you go ahead, Barbara, and lead us into this Psalm 77.
Okay. To the leader, according to Botham of Asaph, a psalm. I cry aloud to God, that he may hear me. In the day of my trouble, I seek the Lord. In the night, my hand is stretched out without wearying. My soul refuses to be comforted. I think of God and I moan. I meditate and my spirit faints. Selah. You keep my eyelids from closing. I am so troubled that I cannot speak. I consider the days of old and remember the years of long ago. I commune with my heart in the night. I meditate and search my spirit. Will the Lord spurn forever and never again be favorable? Has his steadfast love ceased forever? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious? Has he in anger shut up his compassion? Selah. And I say, it is my grief that the right hand of the Most High has changed. I will call to mind the deeds of the Lord. I will remember your wonders of old. I will meditate on all your work and muse on your mighty deeds. Your way, O God, is holy. What God is so great as our God? You are the God who works wonders. You have displayed your might among the peoples. With your strong arm, you redeemed your people, the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. Salah. When the waters saw you, O God, when the waters saw you, you were afraid. The very deep trembled. The clouds poured out water. The skies thundered. Your arrows flashed on every side. The crash of your thunder was a whirlwind. Your lightnings lit up the world. The earth trembled and shook. Your way was through the sea, your path through the mighty waters. Yet your footprints were unseen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. Okay, let's see what's going on here. 77
So there's clearly two parts to this. One is a powerful cry to God to say, like, you don't let me sleep, but I have no comfort. I've got nothing. My life is horrible, and it's gone from bad to worse. I don't experience any graciousness from you, God, in my life at all. I can't feel you. I can't see you. I don't know you. And maybe you've changed, God. Maybe you don't care. And it's not all that hostile, but it's just listing it like, this is the facts, Jack. I'm living every day, and I don't see any sign that you're active. Then, almost schizophrenic, I guess, the writer says, but wait, I'm going to spend this time remembering what God has done for me in the past. And so there's this model which is set up, which says, and actually I've preached on this many times, that there is this thing in human experience in this world created by God, which just says you never see God in the present day. You don't see God. You don't see the mercy and the grace of God in the present day. You always have to look back. And when you look back, and you look back, sometimes a long time and sometimes a short time, but when you look back, that's when you will see the gracious acts of God. You will see that God has been guiding you all along, like the shepherd leading the sheep. But you can't see that in the present moment. You can't see it. And, this then becomes a recitation of what the psalmist, the writer of this psalm, has learned about how the Jewish people have been saved by God at the parting of the Red Sea, and the waters responded to God, and lightning struck, and everything in the earth seemed to respond to what God wanted and what God was doing. But he can't see any of that in his life today. But his faith is stirred in the remembering. And it's like there's an African-American spiritual that says, some through the water, some through the fire, but God leads his dear people along. It's not that the present day is all that full of wonderful, faith-inspiring experiences, but if you want to see God, you've got to look back. You've got to look back in your life. And when you do, you will always see God at work. God helping, delivering, guiding you to still waters and green pastures and all the rest of that. So what do you think about that?
A good thing to do.
Yeah.
Is it a feeling of abandonment that God is not answering now?
Yeah, I think it is a feeling of abandonment. It's, will you spurn us forever? Have you forgotten all about us? What's going on? Why are you not responding? Although he doesn't ask why. He just says, will the Lord spurn us forever, and will we never be favorable to God again? Has your loyal love completely come to an end? Will your promises fail for generation after generation? Has God forgotten to be gracious to us? These are, these are intense questions. Hello, Judy. Her sound's not working yet. Hi, Judy.
Not yet.
Not yet. Now she is. Hi, Judy.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Yes. Hi. Hi.
So we're just begun discussing. We read Psalm 77.
Okay.
No, that's where we're at.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. 77.
And I don't know. I can maybe inspire you to tell a little bit of your own stories. I mean, these days, in the present day, there's challenges in front of me as a pastor in the church and my family. I feel like day after day, like, what next? I just, and yet I have to say that when I get to the place I sometimes get to, which I do, which is, okay, what is this all about? Where are the signs of God? Where is God? And then I remember to go back. I don't have to go back that far, but I can go way back if I want to in my life. And I have a series of events that have been the signposts of God having been gracious and merciful to me in my life. And you know, it might not mean that much to other people, but man, they were miraculous for me in
Right.
my life.
Right.
Just, and so then the invitation of this pattern is to say, when it feels that God has abandoned you, then you go back to your story.
Yeah.
Tell your story. Remember your story. And it will inspire you, I guess. It'll comfort you. Because when you were going through that back then, it didn't feel like God was with you then either. You know?
Right.
But now you look back and you can see it. You go, oh my goodness, yeah, look at that.
That's right. Yeah. But when you're going through it, it's happening.
But I often say to myself, "Oh, ye of little faith,"
Yeah.
because I figure, oh, it was all gone to hell in a handbasket, and then I realize that it's not as bad as I think it
No,
is.
right. And there are things that happen. You know, you plan, you do everything you can to try to make your life unfold the way you think you can. And then when it doesn't, then the despair settles in and you think, oh, it's not going to work. And then something comes along that you never planned on. Something
Right.
you never had a part in thinking about. And yet it also, for me at least, it feels like those experiences are hard to remember. You know, you have to work at remembering them and remind yourself how you felt at that time.
Yeah. Well, I know for myself, going through a very difficult time of divorce, where there was really very little family support, and where my ex-husband landed up in jail. And it was a new neighborhood and everything new. And it was really a time of being stuck in the mud. And somehow it slowly began to untangle itself. And I think a lot of what I understand now about me came from that period, which I don't know that I would have understood or identified, perhaps if I hadn't gone through it. Would I really want to do it again? No.
Right.
No. But I think that the outcomes were such I never thought they would exist. But I think today, the person I've become, I think, really was shaped a lot by that very, very difficult time. You know, where you just were empty. You know, of all ideas, and yeah. So I agree with you, Lou. I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
That. Yeah.
When you go through a difficult time, you always feel, why me? But I know I've often heard that it does strengthen you.
Yeah. Well, I often think, I didn't really sign up for this.
Right.
There's no way. And I don't really want the job,
Not it, right?
And I think it can, those experiences can strengthen you as long as you stay with them until you see the hand of God at work in them. You know, because sometimes you go through difficult times and it feels like you just stayed there and no help ever came and you don't see what really happened, or you forget about it and you don't remind yourself. I mean, 90% of the writings of the Hebrew scriptures are about remembering what happened in the past. Don't lose sight of what happened in the past. Every year, I mean, the Jewish faith is built on anniversaries of remembering. You know, the Passover and all of the remembrances. It's the remembrances, and why do we remember them? We remember those experiences of God's deliverance so that maybe, and I'm saying a big maybe it will help us to endure the present moment where we don't feel God is present.
Like now.
Yeah, like now. Like now. Exactly, like now. And I get frustrated with myself because I feel like, why can't I give myself permission? You know, I'm approaching 70 years old. I've been through this cycle of worry and think my life is over and something bad's going to happen and I'm done for and all the rest. And then something comes I didn't expect, and I feel like, oh, you silly man, you know, you're a man of faith. Why don't you put your faith to work? But it just feels like, I don't know, it's like I got to start all over again because another challenge comes along and my faith goes out the window like a feather, and I'm back in the cycle of, oh God, why are you not helping me? You know, like.
How do you get out of that then? What do you?
I think the only way to get out of it is to intentionally, maybe I would say, put together a timeline of the events. Write down the story of God's goodness to you, especially at the time when you thought you were alone, when there was no shepherd. And I'm thinking about that while I'm sitting here, and I think, you know, I should write that down because I've got, you know, I have these pivotal moments in my life. You know, one that I remember, when I tell myself I need to remember, my Red Sea experience goes back to, it's always about my call. It's about where I'm going to be a pastor. And I had informed my church that I was serving, that I was going to be leaving. I thought that I had a place to go to, and then that fell through. And so I was upstairs in the attic of that house, putting together resumes, sending them all over the United States, everywhere I could go, and I didn't get responses at all in the time in which I needed it. I was going to be out of work, and I had 4 little children at the time. And so I'm panicked, and I'm sending out these introductory letters to churches that I know are looking for a pastor, and in the Presbyterian system at that time, you really had to be introduced to the Presbytery executives first. They wouldn't let you just apply for a job. And so I'm cranking these things all out, and I'm getting so frustrated. And finally, someone said to me, you know, you live in a presbytery. You should go to the presbytery where you live. Because, see, I wasn't a Presbyterian pastor yet. I was pastoring a community church, and I hadn't gone through the ordination process yet. So I was on the outside of the ring. And so someone said to me, you ought to go introduce yourself to the clerk of the presbytery. Just go in person to his office. It was in Ewing. So I packed myself in the car. I went down. I had an appointment with this guy. I went in. I sat down, and we talked for, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half. And he said to me, you know, Lou, our church is looking for a pastor. And I said, what? He said, yeah, we're looking for an associate pastor. Do you have your resume with you? I said, yeah, I do. So I went out to the car, I got it, I brought it in, and I had to drive about an hour to get home. And before I got home, I guess the committee was meeting immediately after I was there. Before I got home, I got the call that the committee wanted me to come in for an interview. And it was like I had reached the end of my rope. I really had. In fact, I had called up a farmer friend of mine and secured a job to be able to go over and work on the dairy farm so I could still provide, you know, for my family. And in an instant, it was like, it was so mind-blowing that having worked so hard in the way I thought I was going to solve the problem, and then when I had really given up and just had decided to just throw myself on the face, within a half a day, I had this church that was now looking, and that's the church I ended up going to. And they had a house for me to move into. They had a job. They had, I mean, it was, it was embarrassing that it was so like a Red Sea moment. And I can remind myself, don't kid yourself. You were panicked beyond belief about what you were going to do. And yet then out of none of my planning brought about the next stage. So I try to remember that. I have it written down in a journal that I write. I have a couple other, what I call my big, parting the Red Sea moments. Actually, truthfully, one of them also was my call here. I was in the Milburn church, and they just renewed my contract for another year. Then they called up and told me, no, sorry, we have a pastor. I was the interim. I had nowhere to go. And they said, well, we'll pay your salary. And I was like, that's not going to help me. I don't have a job. So the church in Bergenfield had an empty manse. So I moved my family into their manse, not knowing what to do. I ended up working for them for 6 months. And in the meantime, I was waiting for there was a large church I had candidated for. Half the committee was really sold on me going there, and half was not. They had somebody else in mind. They couldn't make up their mind. And time was running out. And again, I was like, this is not good. And the way I tell this story is the way it actually happened. Laura was at work in New York City. She was looking through the opportunity list, and she called me up at the office and she said, Lou, you got to read the description of this congregation and their search for a pastor. And I said, why? And she said, this is you. They are searching for you. And so I read it, I agreed, but I looked at what they were offering for a salary, and there was absolutely no way I could afford to do that. And Laura just kept saying, I think you should go with the fact that this might be the church where you belong. And, heaven and earth got moved. The Red Sea parted. They sold property. And then the North Haledon Church decided at the same time to close, and all that came about. It was like the water parting. And I can't unsee that. I can't convince myself that is not the way it happened. Mm-hmm. But sometimes
George used to call it the trifecta.
Yeah, that's right. And so, but I can't convince myself it didn't happen. But sometimes I put my hand over my eyes, put my fingers in my ears, and pretend that isn't a lesson I was supposed to have learned.
Mm-hmm. Have you read Diana Butler Bass's book, Gratitude?
Yep, I have. And that's exactly the same pattern she's talking about.
Right. So many times I've been in programs where they say, every night you should write down 10 things you're grateful for. And I start and then I stop.
Yes.
But I do try to thank God every day for something because, I am grateful. There's been a lot that hasn't been so great, but there's, I have been blessed for sure.
And then sometimes it's very, very small things that you're grateful for. I mean, that the faucet in the sink turns on and you have
right. I was excited today. I finally got my car washed for the first 6 months. Hallelujah. And I had to fill the gas tank. You have to do your own gas down in Florida. So oh no, do I need gas again? But I'm grateful I could do it.
Yeah, that's it. Small things. Yeah.
That's it. That's it. That, you have to realize, that it doesn't have to be the whole world has changed for the better, but that one little thing can make a difference.
Yeah.
And then if you
go ahead. The fact that you are breathing.
Right. Amen. And when I get a pain here or there, I go, I have to start breathing. Breathing is important. That's
right.
for sure.
And there's another whole dimension to life, which is you know, we think we know what's going on. We worry about the things we think are the threats. We get surprised by the solutions that come along. But what we don't really have any awareness of is all the things that didn't happen. You know? All the things that did not happen.
Right.
And that could have happened, but they did not. And we don't, you know, we don't think about, even if we want to write a prayer of gratitude, it's always about, well, thank you, God, for what you did and all the rest of that. And it comes to my mind because over the weekend I noticed in the house, in the church house, I noticed there was a lamp that we use every night to get us to the bedroom, and it wouldn't come on. I changed the light bulb in it, and it wasn't a light bulb. So the next day, I go down in the basement, and I find out, or actually what happened was, Laura, in the morning, she said to me, Lou, there's water on the floor in the basement.
Uh-oh.
And she said, I think it's coming from the toilet in the downstairs bathroom. I think it's leaking. And sure enough, the toilet was leaking. But what I wasn't prepared to discover was that underneath the bathroom was the circuit breaker box.
Jeez.
Oh, no.
And the water had been leaking out of the bathroom, came down, was saturated the electrical panel in the house,
Oh,
and blew 2 circuits, which caused that light to not work.
Oh, boy.
And I know because the fire engines came in North Halden in that old building where a bathroom toilet leaked down on the electrical box. It started a fire.
Right.
And
Right.
that church could have burned to the ground. And so there I am, I'm standing in my basement, and I am aware I'm not having a moment of gratitude for what God has done, but I'm having a moment for what did not happen.
Right.
right.
So, you know, I was able to quickly find the leak. I fixed the leak, and then I let it dry for a day, and then I replaced the circuit breakers and the switches that burned up. And the whole time I'm saying to myself, oh my God, literally.
Right.
How close do we come sometimes, you know?
Right.
How close do we come to things that never happen? And
Oh,
I feel that way every time I get in the car.
yes, I know. Right,
that,
And get home, huh?
yeah.
it's so interesting to think, yeah, to reverse the sentence. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And so you begin to look, not in a despairing way, but you begin to look at, you know, we say, well, thank God for the things that do happen in your life, but thank God for the things that do not happen,
Right.
you know? And sometimes that'll come to you if someone else's, a tragedy in someone else's life, it'll come to you. Thank God that's not me. You know, it's not my child who got hit by a car, or it's not me, but this is different. This is like right in the middle of your life, you're surrounded by a whole series of events that are not happening. You know?
Yeah, very interesting. Maybe I'm thinking, how can we apply that thinking today when we pick up the newspaper and we start the day?
Well, here's instantly to my mind, it connects with something I've been working on in my mind. I think one of the ways that we can do it is, I'm getting a little angry at my liberal communications people, what we would call the liberal press. I know they're trying to raise the alarm about the Trump administration and the terrible things they're doing, but honestly, I am suspicious that they too they're whipping me up. I don't like that feeling. I don't like the feeling that they're out there, you know, because I catch them making something out of nothing, making more out of it than it actually is. And I feel like this feeling of anxiety and this feeling of gloom and despair, I'm not saying these aren't scary times, they are. But we don't need to be making something out of nothing in the middle of times to get upset about the things that are really happening. It makes it very difficult to keep our anxiety down and then to keep us at an action level, to keep us at a place where we can actually be doing something
Yeah, that's good.
rather than just pushed off to the sideline and worrying.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And also, I know they have to do this, but I also feel like they're abusing a lot of the anxiety that like-minded people to me feel. They're abusing it to raise money. I mean, their fundraising initiatives are in full swing. You'd think this was 2 months before the presidential election again, because they're all out there telling tales of woe, some of which we need to hear,
Yeah.
telling them in a way that is, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, do you think that first of all, it's a time of shock, and then a kind of tusk. What are we going to do about it? What are we going to? And that's kind of where we are now.
Yeah.
And then after the tusk times, then slowly we begin to think about an outcome, a positive action. But that before we can get to that place, that there has to be a process.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it depends upon who you're listening to and what paper you're reading as to what stage that liberal mind is at.
Yeah.
Now, I saw something recently that I really liked, and it was I don't remember who put it out, but it was action steps for February and March, and what you can do. I think it was one day in March, or more than a day. It was a week where nobody buys anything from Amazon.
Right. Right. March,
Yeah.
I put the dates down.
Okay, so
And there's a February 28th,
That's-
shouldn't
okay.
shop at all.
Great.
But
Yeah,
Amazon,
that's
right.
right. Yes, so that every now, it depends upon what stage you're at, I think, and what you're reading at that stage. And sometimes there's a crisscross, and you may not be ready for that, and some of us are still tusking, tusk, terrible time. And then there are others that, are beginning to think, okay, well, what if everybody stopped buying from Amazon for a week? What would that do? Would it do anything? Well, we can try it, but I think that's it. I think that as we go forward, it's going to be in stages. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And maybe there'll be an underground. I keep thinking, I keep thinking about World War II and the Vichy government, and there was a government in exile. And I keep thinking, what would happen if we had a government in exile? Who would lead us? Where would we go? How would we do it? What would we? Yeah. But so I agree with you, Lou. I think that it's where we're at that. We may not be where the newspaper is at, or where NPR is at, or but I think for all of us, it's just taking small steps to action.
Yeah.
That's really where we want to be, but it's not so easy to spurt, from where we are, because it's such a different place from where we are now.
No, the idea of the answer is money, does turn me off because, I don't know how many emails I get every day from different, and, I've been a supporter of ACLU, and I'll continue to support ACLU because I feel that they can really make a difference.
Yeah.
But everyone else who's asking for money, I'm hesitant to, to do anything because, what is it? Where is the money going?
Right.
What is it going to do?
And I agree
I
with you.
need an answer.
I've been a supporter of the ACLU for years because I can watch what they do, I believe in what they do, and I think
Right.
that they are the ones who are going to be on the front line for us.
Right.
And I mean,
Right.
really on the front line. They're not, they're going to put their lawyers out there and they're going to spend a lot of money, like going
Right.
to court, and so we need the courts now. And I
Right.
feel like that's where our greatest hope is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I agree with you, but I also think that new thinking, that in order for it to really change, we have to change the complexion of the Congress. And since there's going to be a primary in June and an election in November, I'm thinking that maybe in all these solicitations that I should find out who's running and who needs money to beat some of these Republicans. And I guess what did I read someplace that there are 12 districts and only three of them are held by Republicans. But then I think, well, all of these, not all, but a number of these people who were in Congress, like Stefanak, whatever her name is, who's now the ambassador to the UN. Okay, so her office is going to be empty.
Right.
So should I find out who's running on the Democratic ticket and then support that person?
Right.
Because I'm thinking, like you're all saying, where do we get all these solicitations, but what is really, what will really move us?
Right.
And
Right.
it's changing the Congress. And maybe there's an opportunity if we find out, who some of these other people are who no longer, have those jobs in Congress, and those spots will be empty, and who's going to fill them, and who then needs the money? Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's one strategy that I hear people, it makes sense to me. I think there are 3 seats in particular that are up very short term. Those elections are going to happen in April.
Yes.
Those are, that's one way of helping to turn the tide. I agree with that.
And the governor of New Jersey,
Yeah.
we're going to do, and there are 5 or 6 of those Republicans, vying for that seat.
Yeah.
I don't.
There's 5 or 6 Democrats too.
Yeah.
That's right.
That would be really sad if New Jersey, became
New
rich.
Jersey's had a Republican governor before. Sometimes we do that, we put
Oh,
the
that's
Republican
right.
governor in.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Tie
Yeah.
the hands of the governor by giving them all Democratic legislators. That's a game that government plays. But I really do think that I don't know what it is. I haven't quite got my mind around it yet. I do know that I have a tendency to get very I'm excitable. I worry and I panic, and I also know that that's my least effective time.
Yeah.
They had a guy on NPR today who, quite frankly, I didn't like, but I should have liked him because he was a Republican who wasn't anti-Trump, but he was an environmentalist, and he's the head of some big, environmental organization that is a Republican, is trying to get initiatives to save the earth for clean air and clean water and all the rest of it. He's a Republican. And he's saying, look, I'm well known to this administration. I'm friends with Donald Trump, and I know you need to support me because we can't do this, Democrats or Republicans alone. We have to have a coalition of support. And of course, then the interviewer on NPR was like, well, we don't have any sign that the current administration has any compassion for the environment at all. And the guy said, yeah, but you don't know all of the Republicans. And you don't know how many of them are determined to do something about the climate. And I'm riding along in my car and I go, I don't care, I don't like them. I don't like any of them. I don't want anything to do with any of them. And then this is my further thinking is, and that is exactly what these people that wrote 2025 want. They
Right.
want us to be so divided that we would never talk to each other about any issues.
Give up.
Yeah, and I don't want to be a part of that.
Right.
I can tell you too that I go every year to the Homiletics Convention conference, which is held by Lutheran Seminary out in Missouri. And it's always in different cities. This year it's in Atlanta. And I'm getting ready to sign up for it. And I look at the topic. The topic is learning to talk to each other. And I am immediately turned off. I don't want to go to this national conference with 3,000 pastors, leaders of congregations, and have people tell me I need to learn how to talk to Republicans. I don't want to.
So what will you do?
I'm going to go.
And talk to them.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, most of that congregation, most of that gathering would be very liberal anyway. It's a liberal gathering. They're
Right.
scholars, they're biblical interpreters. It's like Barbara Brown Taylor will be there. All those people that write those blogs, like they'll all be there. But what I want to do is write to them and say, change the topic. Change it. Don't tell me you're going to teach me how to be civil and talk to these people, because they're not civil and they don't talk to me. They don't have any need to convince me of anything. They're headed off into their own oblivion. And so, boy, don't I sound just like them.
Yeah. What did Michelle Obama say? They go low, we go high.
Well, I need to get high. Oh my gosh.
It's so hard to, I know there was someone, as I work at Habitat Restore in the morning, and there's one guy there that works there that, I'm sure is a Trumper. And he was saying, oh, this guy Musk, he really doesn't want their money in Social Security. He's not going, I'm going, all I could do, not to scream at him.
I know.
Oh, of course, he doesn't want our money, but meanwhile, all his minions are getting our information.
And then I get a personal email from a colleague, friend of mine, whose daughter is going through a transgender operation and in a school system. I think she's 14 years old, and he said, please pray for our family, pray for my daughter, because the willingness of people to come out and to mock her and to abuse her has changed dramatically.
Right,
And,
right.
she was on her way to trying to help find her life and her own identity, and now it's like she wishes that she had never, ever revealed to anyone.
Yeah.
And that she wants to go back in this shell, and that's what leads to the suicides with these people.
Absolutely.
And, it's a wonderful family. Actually, they're conservative Republicans.
Right. Well, that's it. How many times people, all those people, and then someone in the family, and all of a sudden, it's human.
Yeah.
I thought
not
that I thought one of Musk's daughters or sons or
Yes. I understand he has nothing to do with the child.
oh yeah, well,
Yeah,
that
I mean,
would, you would think that there'd be some kind of empathy, but no.
Yeah.
I think that
No, I think he is completely disassociated himself from the child.
one of the snarky memes that I saw was, you would think that two men who'd been married to a total of 8 different women and have have 11 different children would never be able to pose as somehow morally superior to anybody else. I mean, what is wrong with us? What is wrong with this world?
I think of some of these playwrights, Beckett and Pirandello and Maman, and I think of all the absurdity in their plays and the creation of characters just like this. But these are real characters on the stage. They're not,
No, that's right.
made up.
I have friends who are putting up posts on Facebook. I've had more existentialists quoted, all these philosophers who saw the insanity of society, and now all their quotes are relevant. They're just come spilling back in. Because this is exactly how the philosophers saw the insanity of human behavior. It's, my dad, I love my dad when I remember him saying things like, who ever thought of calling anybody in the United States a moral majority? Who ever had the nerve to say that? Like, that's born out of ignorance.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went to a class today on book banning and what is being in Florida, and what is being taught in the schools or not being taught. And the person who was teaching it actually had been I think he might still be a professor at the university here, although he's on in years. He had been a president of a university in Notre Dame in North Dakota, and he had been a biologist. His original start was as a biology teacher, but they were talking about the freedom. This is the free state of Florida, but what are you free to do? It's unbelievable. Again, To Kill a Mockingbird is banned in Florida.
Yeah.
Oh, well, oh, I didn't know that. Yeah.
You're free to read what we think you should
Right.
read. Or,
And who makes these decisions? A 14-year-old?
yeah, exactly. Who makes the decision? Don't ask that question. They're going to make that decision for you, whoever they are. People who believe that they are better judge of morality and better judge
Moms of Liberty, they're called.
Yeah.
Who goes after the libraries? Moms of Liberty. How's that for a title?
So some librarians are losing their jobs.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I don't get as upset about changing, removing the book bannings that will have sex in it and, aren't. What I get most upset about is the removal of the books that tell the truth of the American history of slavery.
Right.
And how the economy, the very functional economy of the United States was totally dependent upon the industry of slavery. I mean, it's how the United States became an economic giant, because it had free labor. Can you imagine free labor, what you could do with free labor? And they did. And they were not nice. They were brutal. They were brutal to families and children that were born. And I mean, and then the lynchings that followed after it was illegal to have slaves, then the lynchings and the brutality, and then the further, discrimination that carries on still. It's I don't know.
Yeah, the instructor called it the critical erase theory rather than critical race.
I think that's very well named.
Yeah.
Erase it. Just erase it.
Right?
Well, what's his name? Musk said you don't need a college degree or a high school degree.
Right.
You just go to elementary school and then join the cult. Yeah.
Yep.
You didn't say the last part, I did, but yeah. But he did say the first part. Yeah, you don't need you don't need to be educated. Yeah.
No, because in his world, if you're educated, you're probably going to organize a labor movement
Right.
to unionize the workers in the factory, and then they'll have to pay more money. They don't want you smart. They don't want
Yes,
you empowered. They
that's
don't.
right.
That's why they're so opposed to the women's movement.
Yeah.
They cannot tolerate human beings who would dare to think that they're on the same level. They
Yeah.
wouldn't. I just,
Yeah.
I don't
And
know.
they're going after the women's colleges now too.
Yes.
As I was just on a Zoom earlier with colleagues from Mount Holyoke, and the president was talking to us about, you know, what the consortium of whatever women's colleges are still left, and getting together and talking about what can be done. I'm not sure much can be done because they just want to destroy all the women's colleges. Yeah. And I said something about, well, maybe, they'll just bribe these young kids. And they said, no, you don't need to bribe. There are just a whole lot of young, guys like Musk has, the 19-year-olds and so forth. And you just use their passion to go in and destroy. You don't even have to bribe them.
Yeah.
So what is frightening is how strategic this group has been, so that there isn't any, I mean, even to paper straws, every single small part of our lives, have been supervised and have been identified. And that's really scary.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, when he talked about the straws, I mean, to have time to even think about that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, for him, that's symbolic of what he believes is the liberals' takeover of the society. With these initiatives that mean nothing. He thinks that means nothing. It's stupid. Plastic straws aren't going to have anything to do with anything. So, and then to me, it's bothersome too as they move to language. The removal of language, of anything that has to do with the Black Lives Matter, all being removed from government documents, all, striking the language. This is a strategy of control. It is. It's just control. And the Republicans, shame on the Republicans, who are supposed to have a platform of being free from government control.
That's the irony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
The government off our backs.
Yep.
Government in the rooms.
Yep. Not happening now.
No.
Not happening now.
Yeah. The language has been so twisted, using words like patriot and, democracy and we the people. I mean, all of that has been, so maligned and
well, and that was true, again, you can see it as the rise of the Nazis. They used that double-speak language as well, and George Orwell in the book 1984 said that was the future. The future was going to be double-speak. You say patriot, but that's not really what you mean. But you take the banner of patriot, wrap yourself in it, and then go off and do the most unpatriotic thing you can think of. Lead a rebellion that destroys part of the congressional building.
I mean, it's
patriot.
Sometimes you look at the American flag now and you think, oh my God, what have they done? They literally have wrapped themselves around.
Yep.
You've seen pictures of the January 6th rioters, with the flags wrapped around their heads and their bodies. I mean, yeah.
And then all the criminals that finally went to court and had to pay their due all get turned loose in society again. What a lesson. What a lesson.
But even in the description of how that was done and who these people are and the use of words that have really such a double meaning, just what you're talking, calling them future.
They were heroes.
Yeah, that's right.
Heroes.
Yeah. And yet they're murderers and they're thugs and thieves but oh no, they're patriots. Mm-hmm.
The professor also was mentioning today, which is something I guess I hadn't thought of, because I always think of freedom and responsibility. But he was saying that they're actually antonyms, that, people think to have freedom is and responsibility. But if we think of it as the opposite, if you have freedom to do anything, meanwhile, if you have a but you need that responsibility. But that's what has happened in many cases. The freedom has nothing to do with responsibility, whether it's morally responsible or what.
Yeah, because the freedom, that idea of freedom comes from the gut. And in the gut is where they feel the resentments. And so the resentments give voice and wing and leg to what they think is a demand of freedom. But it's really just revenge. It's working out entitlements or revenge against those they think that have limited their lives.
Yeah. And then things seem to stall and freeze. For example, the bishop, that lady bishop, and this whole idea of apologizing, for using the word mercy, and then the Catholic Church getting behind her, and then suddenly everything is quiet. There's nothing.
It's hard, other than the demonstrations that are happening, it's hard to get your foot in a stirrup to climb on to something that you can do. I mean, it's just hard. And I think we're in a waiting period. It's hard to wait. We feel like as time goes by, they're fortifying themselves in certain situations, but I don't know. I think our time is going to come. It is. By the way, I saw one picture. I should have followed it a little further. One of those demonstrations that happened, the anti-King demonstrations on President's Day, did you see that in one location, the National Guard had come out because the crowd was so big, and the National Guard all laid down their shields and stood with the protesters.
Oh my.
Google that story, because that is an amazing picture. They have the National Guard all standing there, and all their shields and everything else are laying over on the side, and they are all standing with the crowd in the demonstration. Pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. And I feel bad again, my memory doesn't serve me, but I don't know if you looked up the story of that transgendered man that was beaten to death in New York State. It took place right here in New York, up not too far from here in New York State. But you should look that story up, not for the gore and everything else about it, but for the shocking value of realizing that what's happening is in what's being unleashed as okay. It's almost like a new round of lynchings, and this was done by a whole group of guys. It's just awful. It's awful. But I'm going to read the psalm again about remembering the days of God's deliverance, and that God is going to lead us through this time as well. God will lead us like a shepherd. I'm sure that the Red Sea, when they were standing on the shore of the Red Sea, I'm sure that didn't look all that inviting. And I'm sure, it says, they all turned to Moses and said, "You just let us out here to die. We're all going to die. Pharaoh's army is bearing down on us right now. Bearing down on us." And Moses turns to God and says, "What did you do? Why did you have me bring them out here?" And then I love, it's so simple in the text. It says Moses is complaining to God that Pharaoh's army is coming for them. They're going to grind them into the dirt. And Moses calls out to God, and God simply says this, "Moses, what is that in your hand?" And Moses says, "What?" He goes, "What is that in your hand?" And the staff that Moses carried with him all the time was the one that had turned the Nile River to blood, had brought all the locusts, had done all the miracle things. And God says, "Hey, Moses, in your hand there is a stick that has helped you in trials in the past. Take the stick and touch the water with it." And so Moses does, and voila, the Red Sea opens up. Now, whether you believe that that actually physically happened doesn't matter. But I love that Moses had in his hand what God was going to use to deliver them. And that's where I try to preach to myself and say, Lou, you've had that stick in your hand many times yourself, so just believe in it. Just hear God saying, what have I put in your hands? What do you have? You have your voice, you have your church, you have so many things that are going to be part of the strength of the resistance, which is going to shove this thing back in the other direction. I'm hopeful that this movement in this direction will swing like a pendulum and make the whole thing fall on them. And then a new stage of freedom will be born in America. And, you know, and maybe like in Germany, never to be tried again. Never. Because we all learned an important lesson. That's my hope.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
it's a good hope.
Can it begin
Good.
now? Could it begin today?
Believe.
My friends, I'm going to say good night. Thank you for coming and joining in tonight. Thank you to those of you watching online or listening and joining in. We will be back here next week. And God bless you. I'll see
Thank you.
again.
Thank you, Lou.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care, all.
Good night. See you tomorrow.
Okay.
Yes, will do.